welcome everyone to our latest Lunch and Learn, hosted in collaboration between Boost, which is the learning and improvement community for the North East and North Cumbria, and North Cumbria NHS Knowledge and Library Service. Today we're joined by Melissa Shering from the North East and North Cumbria Integrated Care Board. And Melissa, you're going to be talking to us about positive behavioural support workforce development approach. If you could just skip to the next slide for me, please, Melissa, that'd be great. Thank you. So our Lunch and Learns, there's quite a number in this series already, all on a different topic, and they provide a space for health and care staff across the system to come together and share experiences of their improvement work and the things that they've been doing, learn something new, hopefully, in quite a short, snappy session while you take a break and eat. Focus on quality improvement, and then hopefully be signposted to some further thinking and resources and things as well. Next slide, please. So feel free to turn your webcams off at this point. Please note that we are recording this session and we will make that available to people afterwards so you can catch up, share with colleagues, things like that. Please do use the chat for questions and contributions. There'll be time at the end as well to pop questions in and put your hand up and turn your camera back on and speak to Melissa if you'd like to. Please listen with respect and be present, and please do share the learning and the recording from these sessions with your colleagues afterwards. Okay, so I will hand over to Melissa now, and yeah, excited to hear about the work you've been doing.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for having me today. As you said, this is all going to be about the positive behavioural support workforce development approach. So I want to just give you a little bit of background into what positive behavioural support is, just a brief introduction. Then I'll just go into what we've done and then what we found out, and then where we're at today as well, sort of a whistle-stop tour of all of it. But I do have a slide with further information for anything additional, or if you wanted to know a little bit more about certain areas as well. So what is positive behavioural support? Some of you may be aware, you might have heard it before, but if not, PBS is a framework and it's based on values, rights, theory, evidence-based and process. And it's made up of 12 different components, which is defined in the Go at Our paper. So we have to be doing all the 12 different components, which comes under each of these categories in order to be doing positive behavioural support. And we call that PBS for short. So you might hear me saying positive behavioural support, or you might hear me say PBS interchangeably. So it's all about increasing an individual's quality of life and reducing behaviours that others might find challenging. Sorry. So it's all about, PBS is all about all behaviour happens for a reason. That sort of is the ethos. We need to develop an understanding to why that behaviour is happening. And as you can see here, PBS is a tiered approach. At the bottom there in our tier 1, it's all about good foundations to good care and support, the basics that we need in place, the foundations that we need across the system in order to build up any more bespoke, individualized support. Because as you can see, as we move up those tiers, we get into more of a bespoke, personalized, person-centered or more intense understanding of behaviors, which we refer to there as functional assessment. It's all just about understanding why behaviors might occur. So not a lot of people know that it is a framework and there is a tiered approach within it. So I just wanted to make sure I highlighted it because it helps with understanding why we ultimately did what we did. So PBS, why PBS? It's recommended as best practice. I've put a few of the clippings there of where PBS is recommended in its components or by name as well. So it is recommended as best practice. So now just to give you a sort of an overview of what we did and why we did it, we used a workforce development approach and this was steered by Anne McNall from Northumbria University. So we originally worked with Northumbria University back in 2016 and we completed a scoping exercise because what we wanted to do is we wanted to understand how the workforce was currently being supported with PBS in the region. So we conducted a range of focus groups around the area to try and develop an understanding of what's on offer, what training can you access, what does this look like, what do you feel the barriers are, what do you think's missing? And ultimately, what we understood from our workforce is that we identified variable quality in PBS training, provision and commissioning, and there was sort of a lack of a learning pathway to enable staff families to develop the skills and knowledge in PBS. And there's definitely an absence of infrastructure to support this. So there was no infrastructures within education to provide that training and level of support, but there's no infrastructures within a lot of the providers that we were talking to as well. A lot of what we found is that people didn't understand what PBS was. And I know that within this model, we started off delivering PBS awareness sessions so that when we were running the focus groups and trying to gain people's understanding of what the workforce needed, they had that basis understanding and awareness of what PBS was. But as you can imagine, and anybody who works with our workforce, it's a massive workforce. So actually the challenge was for us to deliver a good, high quality standard, but at the scale that we need to with our workforce, and we know with our social care workforce, there can be a high turnover of staff. So how can we ensure that we put that level of standard in, and we're not retraining staff again and again if people do move to different organisations, which we were finding with the PBS awareness sessions. So I'll go into a little bit more of the other sections covered on this diagram in a little bit. But that sort of leads us to really finding it very important that we needed to ensure there was a level of quality and integrity to the approach that we used. And this is why we chose a workforce development approach, because as I said, we delivered PBS awareness training and we were finding staff maybe in different weeks, different months were coming back on that training because they had moved to a different organisation and they required them to come on that training. So there was no standard and no internal support, so that when that person went back to their organisation, there was no infrastructure to support that learning and support the embedding of that learning within the organisation. So that workforce development approach brought us away from that just train and hope model. So really what we wanted is we didn't want a programme or a learning where it was just about that individual attending the training, but something about system-wide approach, so that we could build infrastructure systems that supported those learners to embed their knowledge, and also some practical application of that knowledge. And we also had decided to focus on social care initially within the development of these programs, because we wanted to build that infrastructure, build that capacity within social care in order to support people within their own homes, within the community as well. And what we wanted from social care is to work together and make that commitment to culture change and developing a standard for the region as well. So ultimately, after all that scope and work, after working with our workforce and understanding the need for infrastructure of support and more training for different people at different levels, at different roles, we came up with a new set of educational programs. And what we found is these educational programs were different to anything else on offer. This was because we knew that we needed to offer a blended learning approach. So some e-learning, some face-to-face, to reduce that time commitment on the workforce, as well as to enable that flexibility to go through that e-learning at their own pace and reduce that pressure on services having to release their staff as well. So we found a lot of evidence around blended learning being really effective. So we looked at that, and then we also looked at each of these elements having an academic assessment, because we decided, based on the scoping, that social care providers and our entire workforce wanted accredited programs in PBS. There is nowhere that can accredit training programs apart from universities accrediting through their accredited schemes. So actually to have some level of quality integrity, but also allow that individual staff to take that qualification with them, we needed to look at university or college accredited programs. So this was really pushed for with our social care colleagues as well. So we needed the academic assessment, but we also needed competency assessment. And this was for us to really think about, right, you can understand the theory, but can you go away and go back to your organisation and apply it in practice? Can you apply those skills effectively and practically, so that we weren't having loads of staff go through these programs with just that academic understanding, but not that ability to go back and implement it within their systems. So as you can see here, we've got 3 different levels and sort of a pillar there at the bottom. And what we focused on was a PBS practice leader. And we developed a level 6/7 qualification with Northumbria University here. And what we were aiming for with the PBS practice leader is working with people who are leading PBS within their organisation. They would have input into policies, procedures, the overall sort of running and leading of PBS, so that they could influence the PBS development, the culture change needed at that organisational level. So again, that they had to apply their academic knowledge, but also apply that knowledge into their organisation and demonstrate how they could look at their systems and start to think about culture change. So obviously we've got somebody leading so that we can think about those systems, but we also needed a PBS facilitator, and we developed a PBS facilitator program at level 4. And this was really focused at managers, those individuals that were working in services, who could work directly with the direct support staff, but also could look at their infrastructure within their services as well, and could link up with their practice leader and feed things back, as well as their PBS practice leader feed and support their understanding and knowledge. And also this built an infrastructure to provide supervision and competency assessment, not only for the programme, but hopefully on that ongoing development need as well. So the PBS facilitator programme was developed for that as well, and that again followed that similar pattern of needing the academic side and a competency assessment. And then we developed a 3rd programme, which was for direct workers, really, whether that was support workers or family carers as well. And initially this was a level 4 programme, but it was slightly less modules, but it was everything in this was tailored to that individual's role and function within PBS, and trying to acknowledge that PBS is everybody's business and we all have a different role. So these programs mirrored each other with the language within the application, but focused on that individual's role. Now, we're still doing a lot of work with the PBS support workers, because we did receive a lot of feedback. So we're looking at a lot of changes for that one, but I'll touch on the other 2 and how they're running in a little bit as well. And obviously, because we're working on a PBS workforce development approach, we also have been looking at and have developed other training needs, other systems, supporting the systems around the development in various different areas, from commissioning to working with families as well. But just to acknowledge in that box that, we need to work with wider systems in order to drive this culture change. So in terms of some of the outcomes for people who have reported to us following going on this programme, from the initial pilot and even from other cohorts that have been through that, people reported to us that there was improved job retention. And as I mentioned earlier, what we were finding difficult is there was a high turnover of staff. So actually, if we can improve that, that is fantastic for the system as a whole, and for the individuals that system is supporting as well. Improved skills, improved staff explanations when they're explaining to other staff. People reported to us, I'm not read out all the quotes, but people reported staff sickness reducing, restraint and restrictive practices reducing, and these were fantastic outcomes. So we didn't want to stop there. We did commission an independent sort of evaluation of this programme, and I've put a link there to find out more, but just to highlight a few things that were found from this is that so the programme, people reported that they felt like it was high quality, it was applicable to the practice. Again, this was all written for those social care providers and their roles, and they felt like that was helping them to disseminate and make those positive changes within their organisation, including quality of life, increasing quality of life for the people that they were working with and supporting. So these programmes specifically focused on people with a learning disability and autistic individuals as well. So reductions in challenging behaviour were found. There was changes to organisation policies and practices and improvements in staff retention. So those are some of the sort of key highlights that we were finding after that first pilot and cohort, and staff that I still keep in contact with are still reporting those positive things. So it was great to have that evaluation that acknowledged that as well. So from the original pilot, we had 27 social care providers complete the training at 3 different levels. So that was our initial pilot, but we wanted, after we got all the positive feedback as well as the evaluation, we wanted to keep this programme going, and our NHS colleagues showed an interest in completing the programme. So our next cohort was 50 NHS staff that were trained up, and this was all during COVID and everything. So we worked within sort of that diverse changes and everything we had to make, and successfully those staff completed that programme. And after completing it with social care and NHS staff and making the changes that we needed to ensure we accommodate for both staff and both parts of our workforce, we then have opened up the programme for both social care and NHS, because obviously, you know, getting both NHS and social care in one setting to discuss some of these things that we discuss on the programme has actually been really fantastic. So we've had a further 2 cohorts complete the level 6/7 qualification, and we've got a current cohort of around 30 staff completing it now. For our level 4 programme, we then worked with Sunderland College after we'd worked with Northumbria University to re-accredit the programme and offer it through Sunderland College. And Sunderland College have provided 1 cohort already, and we're currently providing 2 cohorts, 1 remote and 1 face-to-face, to sort of pilot that sort of delivery. And we've got 30 staff roughly going through the programme at the moment as well. And following the programme, we thought it was really important to publish some of the work, publish some of the findings, because this was the sort of first programme of its kind that looked at the blended learning, looked at the competency assessment within PBS. So we've published 8 various publications about the work as well to show the impact and share the learning. So what's happening now? From that initial pilot of social care providers, we developed a PBS coalition, is what we call basically all those individuals who complete their qualification in the level 6/7 are invited to join what we call the PBS coalition. And this is all about a support network. We look at different areas of PBS and how we can support one another, providers supporting other providers, to increase their PBS skill knowledge, but also share things across organisations as well. And it's been a really fantastic, you know, community of practice to continue to develop people's skills. And in September, we are looking to run another cohort. So this is successfully running now at our level 6/7 programme from a number of years. So we're looking for another cohort to start in September. In our level 4 programme, again, we're looking at another cohort in September. So this is something that's really taken off. Providers are really showing an interest in learning more about PBS and continuing to build that infrastructure within their organisations as well. And we also have a number of priority areas working on different things that those individuals have fed back to us that they need, or organisations who found barriers to completing the programme have then reported to us. So things like PBS readiness, some organisations feel that they're not ready. How do we become ready? So we're looking at developing a host of materials and resources to try and break down some of those barriers and support that. But also we're getting lots of people asking us, so how do we know if an organisation provides PBS and ones that don't? What do we need to look out for? So we were going to look at a kite mark to help people be able to discriminate, to sort of say this person provides, this provider provides PBS, and this one maybe doesn't, and looking at how we can distinguish between the two. And we've also worked with Skills for People in order to co-develop a family carer workshop. So that's now delivered by family carers to family carers, because this was something that we really were passionate about. We need to invest more in our family carer workforce, and we've had really fantastic feedback on this, and that is still running, and still families are coming forward and expressing their interest. And now we run that with Skills for People and Daisy Chain as well, run a range of workshops across the region. And what we're currently doing is we're developing commissioner training in PBS as well. We've had a lot of conversations and done a lot of work with commissioners around PBS over the years, and we know there's the need there to help develop that understanding. And we know there's lots of different commissioning roles as well, and different people have different commissioners have different interfaces. So we're trying to look at a package, and we've developed a day 1 training, including a video that we've just finished. So we're looking about how could we roll that out, how could we embed that across the region as well. And I guess all of this is thinking about, it's not just about one person or one organisation going out and going on the training. It's about that whole provider and that whole workforce change and that culture change for that organisation, but also the systems around it as well. So that is the approach in a nutshell. There's loads more I could tell you, but I'm glad I've kept to time. And as I said, I've got a list of resources here if you were interested at all in any of the scoping or learning anything more about the programs themselves. But yeah, any questions?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Melissa, for that. And I really loved how, it's great to see how you're talking about this is everybody's business, and we know that's so important for this culture change, isn't it? So
yes,
yeah.
Definitely.
So feel free, everyone, pop questions in the chat. Feel free to now take you turn your cameras back on, come off mute, if there's anything you'd like to ask. I've got a question. I wanted to ask, how are you managing to keep the momentum going? There's such a lot there, isn't there? How are you finding that?
Yes, yeah, and I think that it's always so difficult, isn't it, to keep that momentum going. We can always develop these things and they're great, but it is just working with those providers continuously, and things are changing so fast within the environments that we're working from one day to the next. So I think it's trying to be as sort of flexible and responsive to those changes, and listening to the barriers or things that maybe are changing and trying to respond based on those as well. So for example, that PBS readiness has came out of sort of providers saying to us, well, we can't come on that programme, and in order to keep them motivated to learn more about PBS, we're going to have to think of how do we support them, and how do we break down those barriers. So it is just really very much working with those providers, working with our workforce to try and navigate those tricky times.
Lovely, thank you. Helen, I can see you've got your hand up. Would you like to come in?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Melissa. I was just thinking about the accreditation, and that's what I've found with a lot of training as well. That can be a real enabler for accessing training and for people to go away feeling like they've got something towards their CPD. So I do think that's really important that you've added that in, and that's a key part, because I suppose it quality checks it as well, but I think people like to go away with a certificate, don't they? And it all.
And they got to go to graduation as well.
Oh,
And that was just such a magical time as well. Like just seeing everybody's faces year after year, going to graduation, and just it means so much to people, doesn't it? It's a big event, it's a big time of it. Yeah, it is just having that qualification at the end, isn't it? That means so much more to people than if you don't have that. So yeah, I would completely agree with you.
Yeah,
So
well
important.
done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions? Can't see anything else in the chat. You touched on the impact, obviously, Melissa, quite a lot for families as well, and it did make me think back to, there's a strong connection. We did a lunch and learn. It was a while back now. I think it might have even been last year with Debbie Austin, and I'll put the link in the chat actually, because Debbie talked very much about her personal experience of PBS and the benefit that's had to her personally and her family, how it's actually transformed their lives. So if you haven't yet seen that, do and go and have a watch and have a look at that. The people who've joined today, that'd be fab. Any other questions? No. Okay, well, that was lovely. Thank you so much. If you'd just like to move on to the next slide for me, Melissa, that'd be great. So yeah, we will send out an evaluation form by email, so it'd be great if you could fill that in, help us to improve. And next slide again, please. If you or any of your colleagues do know of any topics that you think it'd be worth sharing at these Lunch and Learns, please do let us know, get in touch. We're always looking out for people. We don't actually have any more dates of these planned, but we've got some exciting topics in the pipeline, so we're hoping to be able to advertise some of those soon, hopefully starting from April, which will be great. So thanks so much again, everyone, for joining and for listening, and thank you to Melissa for coming along and talking to us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.